A very warm good morning to one and all present here. It's my privilege to welcome you all on behalf of International Conference on Nanotechnology Addressing the Convergence of Material Science, Biotechnology and Medical Sciences, organized by Center for Interdisciplinary Research, Patil University, Kolhapur.
It gives me immense pleasure as I look around this stage. I am in awe. It feels good to see you all here come together from different places, and I am deeply honored to welcome some among the brightest the world has seen. It's gratifying to see the glimpse of all come into the view, and I assure myself, oh, it's going to be a wonderful show. I'm sure we are going to get a grasp of some unknown and unbelievable facts of the world right here as you visualize the coming moments.
Delegates and my dear friends, we do not lag behind having eminent renowned personalities among us, none other than Chief Guest of Shivaji University, Professor Devanand Shinde.
I also welcome the eminent renowned scientists, Professor Halls, J.S. Kim, J.J. Shim and Ping Pan.
India is a country of tradition and culture. Before every new start, we take blessings of God by lightning of lamp. A single beam of ray can kill darkness, give hope and provide enlightenment. The bright flame today has come to symbolic knowledge, experience and hope, driving away all negativity. Lightning of lamp is not just lightning up the flame, but instead, it's lighting up the ray of love and hope. I request all dignitaries to come forward and do the honor.
Thank you, dignitaries.
Now I request convener of the conference and Dean Center for Interdisciplinary Research, Professor C.D. Lokhande sir, to give his welcome address.
all the activities. President of today's inaugural function, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor P.V. Patil, sir. Chief guest, Honorable Vice Chancellor, distinguished investors, Shivaji University, Kolhapur. Guest of honors, Professor Rudolph from Germany, Professor J.S. Kim, and Professor J.J. Singh from South Korea, and Professor Peng from Taiwan. The invited speakers, Dr. Bhavin Zakaria from Mumbai, Dr. Dubal from Australia, Dr. T.P. Gujar from Germany, Dr. G.S. Zavre from Qatar, Dr. Rajnish Desai from Pune, Dr. Mahajan from Mumbai, Dr. Diwan from Hyderabad, Dr. S.K. Jain from Sagar, Dr. Sonkore, Dr. Jadhav, Dr. Sonami from Kolhapur, and Dr. Patan from Pune University. Participants of the conference, officials of the university, Dr. V. Bhosle, Registrar, Dr. Sole, Finance Officer, and Mr. A.C. Pawar, COE, Faculty of J.Y. Patil Medical College, and press media, friends, ladies and gentlemen. I warmly welcome you all on behalf of J.Y. Patil University, Center for Interdisciplinary Research, and Organizing Committee of the International Committee. I welcome you to the International Conference on Nanotechnology addressing the convergence of material science, biotechnology, and medical science, a 3-day international event organized by Center of Interdisciplinary Research. The goal of the conference is to provide a platform for nanotechnologists, material scientists, biotechnologists, and medical practitioners to enhance their interdisciplinary research capabilities by networking with other peers and showcasing their work. And this conference will serve for the purpose of nurturing innovations in the field of nanotechnology, materials, biotechnology, and medical science. We have received very overwhelming response from all the corners of the world. We are fortunate enough to have the resource persons from Germany, South Korea, Australia, Taiwan, and Qatar. The invited speakers are also from renowned Indian research institutes from Mumbai, Pune, Hyderabad, etc. The research contributions have been received from India and abroad. In all, we have issued about 200 abstracts, in which 36 will be presented in the 3 oral sessions. By considering the current importance of the conference themes, the general funding has been received from Medical Council of India, ICMR, VRNS. These are the government funding agencies. Also, also sponsored by the private companies. It is also funded substantially by the J.Y. Patil University itself. Before going further, I would like to give brief information about J.Y. Patil University and the Center for Interdisciplinary Research. J.Y. Patil University, the new university, has been established in 2005 in the name of great educationalist Dr. J.Y. Patil, Padma Shri Awardee. The university is progressing under the able leadership of President Dr. Sanjay Patil. The J.Y. Patil has been re-accredited A grade with CGPA of 3.2. Further, the Center for Interdisciplinary Research has been established in this university in 2009, and it has a very clear-cut objectives to undertake the R&D programs for nanotechnology and stem cell for application of medical science, to develop the nanomaterials to fight against the cancer by using hyperthermia therapy, to develop tissue engineering and tissue engineering applications for generation of artificial organs. The Center for Interdisciplinary Research contains 2 departments. One is medical physics and another is stem cell and regenerative medicine. J.Y. Patil University is the only university in the state of Maharashtra who has started stem cell and regenerative medicine and Atomic Regulatory Board approved MSc for medical physics. And we have the other PG programs under the Center for Interdisciplinary Center. We have 4 MSc programs and 2 diploma programs. We have also the PhD, which is also an interdisciplinary program, which includes 10 interdisciplinary areas, which includes the stem cell and regenerative medicine, medical physics, biochemistry, microbiology, pharmaceutical science, physiology, anatomy, medicine, surgery, and pediatrics. The Center for Interdisciplinary Research has completed 6 research projects in last 5 years, which were funded by the government funding agencies like DSP, CSIR, UGC, and the DABRMS, costing about 2014 lakhs of rupees. Currently, we have 13 research projects going on in the department itself, costing about 469 lakhs of rupees. And all these projects are government funded and also university funded. We also submitted few research projects for the funding to different funding agencies. Department of the Center for Interdisciplinary Research has signed many MOUs. We have about 14 MOUs, 7 MOUs are national and 7 MOUs are international. In faculty which we are very rich, we have about 19 faculty, which includes about 9 adjunct faculties. We have a DSP faculty inspired fellow in our department, and at the same time we also have a Ramanujan fellow in the department. In the last 5 years, the center has published about 232 papers, in which have about more than 150 international publications, where the impact factor ranges between 0.5 to 7.2. The faculty from the CIR has contributed in editing the books and writing the book chapters. We have 2 international patents which have been granted, and we have applied for 10 Indian patents in last 5 years. And we have also established a very good advanced instrumentation facility costing about 230 lakhs in the CIR, which is quite helpful for carrying out the interdisciplinary research in the institute. And this year we have organized one national conference in the month of June, and this is the international conference which is organized by this Center for Interdisciplinary Research. So once again I welcome to the city of Kolhapur, popularly known as Dakshin Kashi, and to the international conference which is held at the D.Y. Patil University. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Everyone has their own ways of expressing gratitude. We have chosen our way of expressing by supporting lively and savory perception. Now I request Professor C.D. Lokhandya sir to felicitate our Chief Guest Professor Devanand Shindle, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Shivaji University, Kolhapur. College to felicitate Professor Rudolf Holtz.
Dr. Arvind Kulbake sir, Organizing Secretary, to felicitate Professor J.H. Gill. I also request Dr. Kulbake sir to felicitate Professor J.J. Shiv.
I request Dr. S. Indumati to felicitate Professor Ping Sen.
Now I request Dr. Raghavendra Bumra sir to introduce the chief guest, Professor Devanand Shinde.
Good morning to all. I, Dr. Raghavendra Bumra, have a very pleasant duty of introducing our chief guest of function, Honorable Vice Chancellor, Shivaji University Kolhapur, Professor Devanand Shinde sir. He is a very well-known and the most distinguished academician and researcher of India. He is the Professor of Chemical Technology, visiting scholar, University of Oxford, acting Vice Chancellor, University of Mumbai, former Vice Chancellor, acting Savitribai Phule University. He is also heading the responsibility of Chairman of Search Committee for appointment of Vice Chancellor and member of several committees such as Rajiv Gandhi Science and Technology Commission, Steering Committee of State Eligibility Test, Scrutiny Committee for Self-Finance University in Maharashtra. His major achievements includes such as MHRD and NRF ranking 28th place in the year 2015, Nature Publication Group Recognition Award as second place in India for scholarly dissemination in the year 2016, Drive for Affiliated College for NAC and CPE status. He has signed many MOUs with reputed national and international organizations such as Chonnam National University and Dongguk University, South Korea. He is promoting skill education by establishing Center for Skill and Entrepreneurship Development, promoting research culture through Incubator Center, GPS functionality at Space Research Center Panala, and National Lead Botanical Gardens are some more achievements. He is the active member at different statutory authorities at university level and serve as Director, Central Facility for Advanced Research and Training, Chairman, Science and Technology Park, Coordinator, Center for Potential Excellence for Particular Area by UGC, Convener, Advisory Committee for Patent Right and Intellectual Property. He has a 25 years of teaching experience and he has been resource person at various national and international conferences. His field of interest in research are medicinal chemistry, drug design, pharmaceutical analysis with 28 years of experience. As a part of his interest, Professor Shinde has developed 60 fine chemicals and 12 active pharmaceutical ingredients, what we call API, for pharmaceutical industry. He has 253 national and international publications with high impact factor, and he has filed 3 patents and published more than 4 book chapters. Sir has been awarded with various prestigious awards, to name few: Namaste Visiting Scholar to University of Oxford 2017, Resmed Fellowship USA, Fellowship by Swiss Chemical Society Switzerland, and DST Fellowship by Government of India. Professor Shinde has successfully completed many research projects under UGC, AICT, ICMR and CSR. He is a life member of Indian Science Congress Association, Fellow of Maharashtra Academy of Science and member of Academy of Chemical Society. I request Honorable Vice Chancellor Professor Devanand Shinde to address the gathering. Please.
Very good morning, everybody. On the occasion of inaugural function of International Conference, the dignitaries on the dais, Professor Rudolf Fuchs from Germany, Professor Kim Shim and Feng. This is not a single name, there are 3 different people, Professor Kim, Professor Shim and Professor Feng. Professor Vivere, Vice Chancellor of Patil University, convener of this conference, Mr. C.D. Lokande, dignitaries of the dais, invitees, international participants from various national research institutes, speakers, researchers, faculty members of DY Patil University and Shivaji University, students and media persons. I am pleased to have the honor of opening the International Conference on Nanotechnology, Addressing and Convergence of Material Science, Biotechnology and Medical Sciences, and I thank DY Patil University for this opportunity. I would like to congratulate Mr. Sanjay Patil, President of this university, to bring some of the world's best scientific minds here in Kolhapur to share knowledge in the field of consider the technology of the future. India is looking to the future with a new resolve to more strongly harness science and innovation for its prosperity. I see this technology with its amazing breadth of potential application from health to ICT, agriculture, energy and defense. From 10 years ago, way back in 2007, when Government of India launched the mission on the nanoscience and technology, not many people believed that nanoscience could deliver the next generation of the technology. However, today the world is witnessing the promise of nanotechnology across verticals such as engineering, medicine, energy, transportation, communication, to name a few. The nanoscience and the nanotechnology has gained momentum mainly due to its astonishing potential in elevating standards of our living. The wide variety of applications ranging from military to medicine and agriculture textile has been envisaged. The tremendous progress made in this field will soon change the way we travel, the way we produce energy, the way we wear our clothes, and the way we treat disease. It is going to change everyday aspects of our everyday life. Hence, it is important to keep a pace with this dynamic field. Therefore, the organization of such national and international conferences is very much necessary. Our endeavor has always been to create an ecosystem that brings together the best mind from the industry, research and academia globally on a single platform. Friends, I want to congratulate all of you, especially Professor C.D. Lokande, for selecting an apt team for the conference, that is convergence of material science, biotechnology and medical sciences. In today's academics, forget art versus sciences. Discipline rivalry is alive and well within the sciences. It could harm and discourage our students. We need to be aware that making division between disciplines influences our students' thinking, often in unintended ways. In real life, discipline boundaries are extremely blurred. I myself, being a chemist, also work closely with the biologist, pharmacist, and biochemist, even co-supervising research staff and students in this another field. I have seen the university pharmacy departments are packed with the people doing organic chemistry and other subjects. Nanotechnology and surface science research is performed by the chemists, physicists, material engineers and others. It doesn't really matter under which subject heading groundbreaking work is done. What matters is that such work is done. Nanotechnology sounds like a word of great promise, but there are controversial issues too that must be considered and resolved. Some people have raised concern that nanoscale organisms or machines could harm human life or the environment. One problem is that tiny particles can be extremely toxic to human body. No one really knows what harmful effect new nanomaterials or substances could have. Chemical pesticides were not considered harmful when they were first used in the early decades of 20th century. It wasn't until the 1960s and 70s that their potential harmful effects were properly understood. Could the same happen with the nanotechnology? Certainly, you will address to this question during this deliberation of this international conference. The concept of convergence, the blending of material science, biotechnology and medical sciences is a hallmark of the conference, which is really appreciable. Recently, a report, Convergence, the Future of Health, was co-chaired by Tyler Dash, the David Koch Professor of Biology and Director of MIT Koch Institute of Integrative Cancer Research, Susan Hochfeld, noted neuroscientist and President Emerita of MIT, and Philip Sharp, Institute Professor of MIT and Nobel laureate, and was presented at the National Academies of the Science, Engineering and Medicine in Washington on June 24, 2017. The report draws on insight from several dozen expert participants at 2 workshops, as well as input from scientists and researchers across academia, industry and government. It shows several possibilities, such as what if limb could be regrown, cancer detected early with a blood or urine test instead of invasive biopsy, drug delivered via nanoparticle to specific tissue or even cell, minimizing unwanted side effects. While such breakthroughs may sound futuristic, scientists are already exploring these and other promising techniques. But the realization of these transformative advances is not guaranteed. The key to bringing them to future, a landmark new report argues, will be strategy and sustained support for convergence, the merging of approach and insight from historically distinct disciplines such as engineering, physics, computer science, chemistry, mathematics, and the life sciences. I am very happy that you are all doing this right now in this international conference. I would like to briefly cover the advantage of such convergence. Nature has seen the evolution of extremely intelligent and complex adaptive systems to drive the biological process found in everyday life. For example, a cell can fuse information-rich genetic processes with nanometer scale sensors and actuators, becoming one of the most efficient autonomous molecular systems. These basic processes that occur at the molecular level lead us toward a compelling engineering approach, the fusion of biotechnology, nanotechnology, and information science. I sincerely wish you a very productive conference, one that will support the safe, integrated, and responsible development of the nanotechnology. More specifically, it is my hope that you will not only be able to advance our thinking through the lively exchange of information and significant brainstorming that should take place, but also to develop a consensus position on some of the key issues that characterizes the different field of application of nanoscience and nanotechnology. After all, it is up to us to visualize the interdisciplinary world and make it best used through interdisciplinary approach, and this can be the best described by the following quote by Eric Drexler on nanotechnology. I hope everybody must have gone through the Eric Drexler's contribution. What did he say? Coal and diamonds, sand and computer chips, cancer and healthy tissues. Throughout history, variation in the arrangement of atoms have distinguished the chief from cherished, tissues from healthy. Arranged one way, atoms make up soil, air, and water. Arranged another way, they make up ripe strawberry. Arranged one way, they make up homes and fresh air. Arranged another way, they make up ash and smoke. So we must be responsible and cautious before the convergence of this technology. Once again, thanks for inviting me and giving me an opportunity to this August gathering. Wish you all the very grand success. Jai Hind, Jai Maharashtra.
Thank you, sir. As goes the famous saying by Patil, knowledge without application is simply knowledge. Applying the knowledge to one's life is wisdom, and that is his ultimate virtue. Thank you, sir, for sharing your knowledge, older experience with a younger, enthusiastic mind. Sir, we are indeed honored to have you. Thank you.
Dignitaries, delegates, and my dear friends, Patil University is always supporting Go Green and Go Digital. Thus, to save paper, we are here with introducing e-souvenir. I request our convener and other dignitaries to release the e-souvenir now. delegates, invitees and my dear friends, now it's time to release the special issue of Journal of Solid State Electrochemistry. This issue is dedicated to Professor C.D. Lokande sir on behalf of his 60th birthday. I request Dr. Deepak Prakash Dubal to introduce the book. To say a few words about Dr. Deepak Prakash Dubal, he is presently working as a Vice Chancellor's Fellow at School of Chemical Engineering, and he is one of the editors of this book. He is student of Professor C.D. Lokande sir. He is awarded of Vice Chancellor Postdoctoral Fellow from School of Chemical Science, University of Adelaide, Australia in 2017. He is also a Senior Postdoctoral Fellow from Catalan Institute of Nanoscience and Nanotechnology, IC-NACMBM, from Spain. And to his award, he has many publications to his credit, with 2 books and 3 book chapters as well. He is also the guest editor of a special issue in Journal of Solid State Electrochemistry. I welcome Dr. Dubal to introduce the book and to introduce Dr. Professor C.D. Lokande sir. Thank you.
Honorable Chief Guest of today's function, Professor D.V. Shinde sir, Vice Chancellor of Shivaji University, President Professor Dere sir, Vice Chancellor of Patil University, foreign delegates Professor Rudolf Holz, Professor Penn, Professor Kim and Professor Shi, convener of this conference, Professor C.D. Lokande, delegates and my student friends. It is my honor to introduce a great person who sacrificed his life for science and inspired many scientists. A person who changed the lives of many young minds and created bright, dynamic and successful professionals such as scientists and teachers. So I would like to shed a light on his outstanding contribution to the scientific community and his life. So, each person's life is a story, but some stories create histories. If you look at the life of Professor C.D. Lokande, I will start it from his first birthday. Professor Lokande was born in Vasur, Akola, a small village in Maharashtra state in India 60 years ago on December 6, 1956. He is one of those persons who surely recognized as being blessed and honored to enjoy and celebrate his anniversary. He got a PhD from Shivaji University, Kolhapur in 1984 with adjected as excellent. Later in 1987, he joined as an assistant professor in Shivaji University, Kolhapur. Immediately after accomplishing his first postdoctoral stay at Weizmann Institute of Science, Israel, after a long productive career in science, which was temporarily interrupted by his retirement from position of head of Department of Physics, Shivaji University, Kolhapur in 2016, he continued his research as a research director and professor at Patil University, Kolhapur. Professor Lokande has won many awards and received many honors. He was appointed as a fellow of the Institute of Physics, London in 1990s, was a visiting scientist in the Indo-Polish CEP scheme in 1991, and INSA visiting fellow in 1993. Is the first recipient from Shivaji University, Kolhapur of the prestigious Alexander von Humboldt Fellowship, Germany in 1996, and Brainpool Fellowships of South Korea in 2003. Was a participant in Nobel laureate meeting Lindau, Germany in 2001. Was a visiting professor at Hanyang University, South Korea in 2006, was awarded a Rajya Shikshak Puraskar, Government of Maharashtra State in 2009, and Best Teacher Award from Shivaji University, Kolhapur in 2010. In addition, he has visited many foreign countries such as United States, United Kingdom, Germany, China, Japan, South Korea, Israel, France, and many more for his talks. Professor Lokande is presently an editorial board member of Electrochemical Energy Technologies, Degruders Publications from Germany. He is a fellow of Maharashtra Academy of Sciences from 2012, an expert member, DST Committee on Hydrogen Production from 2012, a distinguished visiting professor in polymer chemistry, Institute of Chemical Technology, Mumbai from 2012. The long list of distinguished accomplishments and awards is the proof of his high regards in which he is held in the scientific community. Professor Lokhande is an author of more than 600 papers of international journals with H index of more than 70 and more than 80,000 citations, edited 9 books, filed more than 45 patents, and directed more than 55 PhD theses. According to the Journal of Library and Information Technology, published in 2012, Professor Lokhande ranked 11 in the list of most productive scientists in material science from 2000 to 2010 in India. He also ranked second in the average citations per article and fourth in the H index for the above period. In addition, a recent research in Science and Technology published in 2011 confirmed that Siv Lokhande has been ranked 11 in solar energy research in India during the period of 1999 to 2011. So, what we can dedicate for such an outstanding leader, such an outstanding scientist. So Professor Holz and me, we decided to publish a special issue on the occasion of his 60th birthday. And here we are here to celebrate a release of a special issue published in a Journal of Solid State Electrochemistry on the occasion of 60th birthday of Professor Siv Lokhande, and to give him our hearty tribute for his hard efforts of making ours and our nation's future. So before releasing this book, I would like to request Professor Holz to say a few words about his experiences in publishing this special issue. Thank you.
Well, all actually there is not very much I can add to that what Deepak has already said. Deepak was a Humboldt Fellow at our place 2 years ago, and when he asked me last year in the spring about the possibilities of preparing a special present to a scientist on a specific jubilee, in this case on the 60th birthday, it was quite natural to think about such an issue of a journal, which is called either a special issue, or this German term has made it into the English language a Festschrift, which is a collection of scientific publications, contributions of students, of, in this case of course, Professor Lokhande, but also of friends, of colleagues, all over the place, all over the world, and of course they are all related to the extremely broad and creative scientific output of the Jubilee. So they are mostly dealing with electrochemical materials science. That's the reason why we took this particular journal. And they are dealing with supercapacitor electrode materials. They are dealing with materials for photovoltaics and with electrochemical surface science, electroplating and graded processes, because Professor Lokhande has pioneered several technologies to create surface coatings by various methods. I'm not going into the details right now because this is just a brief presentation and not a scientific talk about preparing coatings both for energy conversion applications as well as for photovoltaics. So Deepak and myself, we invited quite a few scientists all over the place from these various categories, and the response was really overwhelming. This is not the first Festschrift, but it is by far the most voluminous Festschrift I've prepared so far, and I hope Professor Lokhande will enjoy the result of the effort of Deepak and myself. And so I just wish you got already a few copies of this, so it is not really new, but since the publisher is somewhere in Germany, in Berlin, the printer is somewhere, I don't know, in Europe, and the computers of this company are sitting somewhere in the Philippines, so it took a while to get everything together, and so quite formally I give this copy to the Jubilee, and we all know his 60th birthday is already a few days back, but I hope he will enjoy nevertheless this particular kind of present. So.
Thank you, sir. In this very special occasion, I hereby to actually say a few words about the Memorandum of Understanding that we are signing from Patil University through Professor C.D. Loklandey with 3 universities from Korea and Taiwan. I am glad to inform that our university, Patil University, is signing MOU with the scientists of the universities, Chongnam National University from Republic of Korea, Yangnam University, Republic of Korea, and National Tonghua University, Taiwan. I request our President of the conference and our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor P.B. Patil, to exchange the Memorandum of Understanding with these 3 scientists on the dais. The first university, Professor J.H. Kim from Chongnam National University, Gwangju, Republic of Korea. I request the audience to give a great round of applause. Professor J.J. Shim, Yangnam University, Republic of Korea, and with Professor Wen Ping Peng, National Tonghua University, Taiwan. The main agenda of this MOU is to explore the possibilities for faculty members, scholars, and students for research academics and industry training that mutually benefit both institutes, to provide opportunities for student exchange, study program, and internship, to make necessary efforts for joint research programs and joint publications, to develop academic courses of mutual interest in the UG and PG degree courses, and last but not the least, the chance of joint activities and arrangements for specific visits, exchanges, and other forms of cooperation will be agreed upon in writing prior to the implementation of any activity. I am also glad to inform in this occasion we have signed also a 4th MOU with Dr. Jamkaria Clinic from Mumbai, with Patil University and from Jamkaria Clinic, Mumbai. This MOU is also being signed in this occasion. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to talk about the Memorandum of Understanding. Thank you, madam. A man of talent, volumized with potential, blazed to achieve more. We have none other than Professor Dr. Prakash B. Patil, who has set aside most of his work to make it till here and be present amidst us. I request Honorable VC, Professor P.B. Patil, to give his presidential address.
Thank you for calling me here. Chief guest, Honorable Dr. Devanand Singh. I know him last 1 year when I joined here. I met him in the office. I was thoroughly impressed with his work. So kind of thing that you come all the way, something between Pune and Kolhapur. So he is living today in Pune. He is Vice Chancellor of 2 places. Other dignitaries on the dais, Professor Radolf from Germany, Professor Kim from South Korea, Professor Sim from South Korea, and Professor Peng from Taiwan. I am very happy that this international conference is organized here on nanotechnology, addressing the convergence of material sciences, biotechnology, and medical sciences. This is a very interesting topic and very burning issue. It is covering so many areas. And I am happy that it is not only the speakers from India and there are speakers from abroad. There are so many participants from different states and abroad as well. So this is a very good thing. And 20 years back when I was a student of medical, and then about 15 years back when I was a student of post-graduation at PGI Chandigarh, I never heard this word, nanotechnology. I was not aware of anything what is nanotechnology. It was not there in the book. I never heard about it. But later on, I came to know that this nanotechnology is business of science faculty, very physics department, medical physics department. And later on we realized that no, it is not only science, physics, it is something else. Beyond that, it comes to the medical field. Whenever I visit any laboratory, I ask, you are working on this thing, what is the use for us? What is its clinical implication? And then they give the explanation and everything. The nanotechnology is translated into clinical practice. So it is known as bench to bed or from lab to the patient. Ultimately the benefit will go to the patient. And nanotechnology got the broad spectrum applications with so many uses. One of the most interesting use in developing country is that we can have cheaper and cleaner energy. Clean drinking water with nanofilters. I never heard about this. I yesterday read it and I came to know that we can have the cheaper thing. How it is done? You are the expert, you can answer all these questions. It is used in medicine like diagnostic tool in tissue engineering, etc., etc. There are many diseases. Alzheimer's disease, we deal with the memory loss. Then there is Parkinson. These diseases are very difficult to treat. And not only the patient, family members are also very disturbed. And probably after this nanotechnology, something will come out for the management treatment of these patients, which is really, really very difficult to treat. Then this advancement of nanotechnology helps in diseases, so many diseases, I named few of them. It is also used in early detection of many illnesses. So probably it may be helpful in primary prevention, secondary prevention. So once illness is prevented, then probably there is no complication, there is no side effects, and probably doesn't require treatment. So prevention is most important. Early detection of any illness, whether it is cancer, is most important. By the time we come to know about cancer of abdomen, stomach, breast, etc., it is too late. It is too late. So probably nanotechnology is here, all your delegates are here, they will discuss and then they will sort it out. Although there are some good advantages, but there are some risks in nanoparticles like copper and cobalt. So now you have to weigh whether risk is more or benefit is more. So it is double-edged sword. And you are the expert in dealing that, we are not the expert. Finally, I congratulate Dr. C.P. Lokhande for organizing such a nice international conference with having so many guest faculties and speakers. And I wish this conference great success. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Saying thank you can be hard, but at the same time, it is also an important gesture. And for doing that, I would like to call upon stage Dr. Arvind Gulbake sir to give a vote of thanks.
Honorable Chief Guest, all the dignitaries, all the speakers and dear students, a pleasant good morning to all of you. I, Dr. Arvind Gulbake, Organizing Secretary of the conference, on behalf of D.Y. Patil University, Kolhapur, and myself, feel honored and privileged to get an opportunity to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. I extend a very hearty vote of thanks to the Honorable Vice Chancellor, Shivaji University, Professor Devanand Shinde, for gracing and sharing with us your findings and opinions today. We are greatly encouraged by his inspiring address. I wish to express our profuse thanks to the President of Conference, Honorable Vice Chancellor, D.Y. Patil University, Professor Prakash B. Bare. We are really inspired by your enthusiastic words. My deep regards and thanks to Honorable President Dr. Sanjay D. Patil sir for financial support and encouragement. I thanks to the government funding bodies, ICMR, MCI, BRNS, and the private companies like Appendorf, STMRX, and Macrohomes Private Limited to provide the financial support for our international conference. My heartfelt thanks to our speakers, Professor Rudolf Holz from Germany, Professor J.H. Kim, and Professor Shim from South Korea, Professor Wang Peng from Taiwan, Professor Bhavin Jankari from Mumbai, who traveled thousands of miles with the hectic journey to share their research and ideas with us today. We are overwhelmed listening to you all, sir. I wish to express our profuse thanks to the convener of the conference, Professor C.D. Lokhande. It is his vision and leadership that has brought revolutionary changes in the research field at the D.Y. Patil University, Kolhapur. My enormous respect to you, sir. I convey thanks to the co-convener of the conference and the Dean of D.Y. Patil Medical College, Professor R.K. Sharma, sir. Thank you, sir. We are extremely grateful to the Registrar, Finance Officer and Administrative Office for support, encouragement and our guidance. I also wish to express my sincere thanks to the university staff for their support. I thanks to all media persons present here. I also thanks to the organizing committee members as the wheels start rolling months back. I convey thanks to all researchers who are going to attend and present their research work in the international conference. On behalf of organizing committee, once again I welcome you all. Thank you all. Thanks all.
Thank you, sir. Delegates and my dear friends, let us take a break for refreshing tea. Tea is ready outside the auditorium. I request you all to resume here in 15 minutes. Thank you.
मैडम वो जो वीसी जाएंगे ना शिवाजी के
हाँ।
उनका जो सामान है ना एक बैग में करके
हाँ यस यस हाँ
कॅन्डल काढायचे होळीचे कॅन्डल घ्यायचे ऑनलाईन चालू आहे कुठे
स्पीकर अरे नाही दीपक
What about the oral presentations?
Sir, did you submit your state?
No.
So just feedback to her, she will come. So just tell her number so that she can save the presentation by your number.
Yeah.
The experience of working with international students and staffs and imbibing their work culture and learning European standards. During this time, he has traveled extensively in African continent to learn and share views about internationalization of medical education. He was appointed as a research director at D.Y. Patil University, Kolhapur in January 2016. knows now a researcher and enthusiastic personality, presently working with us on angiogenesis and reversal of angiogenesis with endometrial stem cells as well as cervical stem cells, collaborated with the Department of Stem Cell and Regenerative Medicine, Department University, using in vivo and in vitro studies, CAM-assay models, philanthropic bodies. He has published several national and international journals. He has co-authored the book in research methodology. He has been a member of Independent Ethics Committee for Research on Human Beings MOFI from the year 1998 to 2000 research projects undertaken by various national and multinational institutes. He has served and invited. We welcome you, sir, over to R.K. Sharma, sir, to start the technical session. Thank you.
Organizing committee for giving this opportunity to join the session. In which two of the very end, I would like to introduce the first speaker of the day, Professor Patil, who I think we have on Germany. Afterwards, he joined Professor E.B. Yeager at the Case Center for Electromedical Sciences, Oldenburg University in 1987 as Associate Professor in Physical Chemistry. Since 1993, he is full professor. His research is focused on spectroelectrochemistry, self-assembled boson layer, electrochemical material science, and corrosion. He is an honorary member of Secretary Academy of Sciences and of several editorial groups. He is the author of more than 370 articles in Refer International. We invite you on the stage to talk about your talk is on pseudo-capacitive or not, on the origin of current in supercapacitor material. Please welcome.
Thank you very much. That was introduction. And also thank you very much for the kind invitation to attend this conference and to speak at this occasion. Talking about merger, which is now displaced. Well, it will be better because I tend to move around. Okay. So, getting back to the title of the conference about merger, the subject I'm talking about, well, maybe not just from the title, it's also about some merger. It's about the merger of batteries and supercapacitors. I assume that maybe not everybody in the audience is familiar with all details of this, major details of supercapacitors in particular, and those aspects I'm talking about in the next few minutes. So those experts, like Patil or Patil, might just for a minute tolerate some broader introduction to provide some background for those of you who are not yet familiar with supercapacitors and this merger or electric energy. You can store electric energy only into chemical energy. That's what we are doing in electrolysis. That's what we are doing in batteries. When we charge a battery without any transformation. That's very welcome. We transform energy. Every transformation of energy of one form into another form, this is or whatever energy, into thermal energy, into electric energy, into mechanical energy, it is always associated with losses. Without conversion, it is highly welcome. This, in recent years, there are two more interesting and like all of Europe, China, and so on. If we try landscape into our daily use of energy, so we need to match supply, sunshine, also flowing wind, with the demand. And this requires, beyond this storage, which is related to utilize energy more efficiently. So, for example, if you run an electric train with a train, then you are going to brake. The same applies to every car. This so-called by 30 or more percent, which shows up very nicely in the balance sheet in the cost of running such a bus. In order to store or to regenerate this energy, you need storage devices when the bus is braking. The huge electric power generated in that very moment when the train is braking cannot be accepted by any known battery. You might have heard, well, you can do it with lithium-ion batteries, but that is rather unrealistic. So we need devices which can capacitors come into play. The traditional capacitor, the capacitor you might remember from physics lectures in school or first semester at the university, just a storage capability which is very poor. So it is of almost no real use in this energy landscape which I have. It was noticed that you can use the so-called electrochemical double layer. That's the interface between the material, just to take a piece of carbon, activated carbon, whatever. This interface we take instead of a simple piece of graphite, we take a porous body, a compressed body, let's say, of activated carbon powder, very large capacities. And if you take two such electrochemical double layer capacitors, we coined the term supercapacitors. These are just capacitors through metal plates. Storage capability are not satisfying. And at this point, supercapacitors start to merge with batteries. Because our materials, where the electrical energy is not simply between ionically conducting electrolyte solution and electronically conducting redox processes. In redox processes, where ions like manganese change their state of oxidation. This way, the amount of stored electrical energy in a given of 100 square meters or whatever can be increased, can be enhanced by a factor of 10 or even by the separation of charges like in a double layer capacitor, but we also employ future, hopefully, but they have also come under scrutiny regarding the question, what is really happening at this interface? Maybe it's not just simply a redox process, as we have known from many other phenomena like corrosion or fuel cell reactions and so on. And what is the reason why these capacitive currents or these electrode respond to many other electrochemical systems of many other electrodes? Just to give you an example, because right now, so far, the last 3 minutes might have sounded rather abstract or rather theoretical. This is the so-called cyclic voltammogram. That's the response of such an interface between a piece of metal, gold, and an electrolyte solution composed of perchloric acid, protons, and perchlorate ions in water. If we change the electrode potential of this arrangement, the gold metal in this electrolyte solution, if we change the electrode potential into the positive direction, we observe a very small flow of current, which is simply due to the fact that we are storing electric energy in this double layer. Fusion of positively charged cations, the protons, and negatively charged anions in the solution, and we remove electrons from the gold, because your own eyes is basically flat and the current is smaller. If the response changes a little bit, and you can see it much better in this case, the current response as a function of the scan rate is a capacitor. For that reason, capacitive behavior. This electrochemical interface behaves like this capacitor, two plates, and an insulator in between. If we move once again as a function of the scan rate, I have displayed the currents, and now the currents in electrode materials and electrodes and cells we can store about once again. The current increases as a function of the scan rate in a linear fashion. When we are looking here, and when we are looking here. What is going on? Form a layer of gold hydroxide on the gold surface. And this gold hydroxide is slowly turned into gold oxide, and finally, when we go back, we reduce this oxide or gold hydroxide layer
And once again, in this range, we are in the region of pure double layer charging. So both this capacitive current as well as this, since we know this current, this much larger current, is due to a redox process, this process, or this behavior, this appearance, this linear relationship has been called by so good. And now, I think everybody in this room will ask me or himself, is this guy really talking about a supercapacitor made of gold? No, not at all. I just took gold as an example to make the distinction between the capacitive and the pseudo-capacitive. Because the current response, as seen in this picture, behaves like a capacitive process, but in reality it is not a capacitor, and that's the reason why it is called pseudo-capacitor. Now we move to some more realistic material, which, for example, is manganese dioxide. Manganese dioxide, much cheaper, environmentally acceptable, and so on and so on. And in this example, we have coated, just for an illustration, we have coated manganese dioxide on a piece of graphite. It's very smooth surface. We have coated the manganese dioxide to our group by Deepak Dubal when he was a Humboldt Fellow in our group a few years ago. And again, I could make such a plot which would look exactly this way, and the response, it's not rectangular, but it is very close to a. So we all know in this room, it is due this current in this direction, or it disappear, and only such response results. The reason understood. So what is going on at this electron transport? Metal is an electronic conductor. So when we are moving into the positive direction, told you a minute ago, the gold is oxidized, or the manganese switches anions like the sulfide anions in this direction, moving towards the interface. So these are the species in solution. This is what's going on at the interface. We are observing a redox process in a traditional site, such a shape. Well, this is it's the ruthenium oxide, a rectangular response and very weak waves on it. Of the redox state of oxidation, a bit more complicated, and these waves, I would not call it a peak, these waves have such a huge current under these very weak waves. I already mentioned in passing, we are oxidizing the manganese 3 into the main, while the sodium ions are moving in for charge compensation adsorption. But why is the, whatever the number we have picked, why is this response not shown? This is a picture you would get if you would do exactly the same experiment. No peaks, because in such an electrolytic capacitor, you only have, and this is only a detail of the electron. Why is such behavior observed with a capacitor? A similar, different. Well, you can either take this kind of shape, or if you voltage response, experimentally at a constant current or constant current density. This example is the same capacitor as used here, or did not address the question, why is this current response an attempt to explain or manganese hydroxide or manganese oxyhydroxide, whatever, whether it's manganese 3 or. And these manganese ions are more or less close to each other. This manganese ion oxidation will happen at whatever next manganese ion. The first already, the energy I need to provide, have a lot of difficulty interaction between the first and the second here. Strong interaction. If there is no interaction between the manganese ions, this will be oxidized at the same electrode potential. In that case, this idea was not at all new. This publication was electrochemical observation, but based on studies of organometallic. This classification of no interaction, and going back to a discussion with Benjamin Kondratyev at St. Petersburg State University, effective, and assuming, which means a tiny sign in a very simple approach. We can assign a step from the first to the last. Of course, we are not talking about thousands. I don't know of any numbers how many manganese ions are in composition. So the oxidation potential shifts transferred. I tried first to use simulation program every single manganese ion. So I stopped after a very few peaks, and already after a very few peaks, in this it reminds you a little bit of those pictures you have seen before. For example, the amount of Faraday current, assuming this particular material, I added to the Faraday, which of course also has a double layer capacitance. I added up everything, and again, not very surprisingly, attribute what Musgrave reported, behavior of alpha and beta magnitude in storage, and some are so poor. And so at this point, the reason for this is a strong electronic, the Rossini lines or whatever idea gains some support from the shape of the response. It depends on the behavior is different as compared to a very dry material, and it's more correlated with the response. So the electronic interaction is not as effective, whereas the resulting in this image this pseudocapacitive current response. A total supercapacitor current and so on. In that case, a huge current and only current peak responses, which again are similar to the responses of this pseudocapacitor, because in the conducting polymer, this is just the fully oxidized into the semi-oxidized state, and this is the highly conducting state. Effective length of conjugate copper oxide example. I didn't show you the CV. I should have shown you the copper oxide example, which looks much more like the CV. So it's the same manganese dioxide, but the behavior depends on the experimental conditions, and it depends also on the chemical state. In case of these hydrous materials. Thank you.
Can I invite one more question?
It was really an excellent lecture, comprising golden characters. My question is, most of the commercially available supercapacitors, for example, Excel, like a company, they are based on the activated content, EDLC. What exactly is the bottleneck in the oxide supercapacitor based on
Once again,
most of the commercial market available supercapacitor materials are activated carbon.
Exactly.
What exactly is the bottleneck for the oxide?
Yes, that's a question we are certainly also thinking about. The bottleneck, but please, sir, you will interrupt me when I start into a second talk. Because no, that's very interesting and also a very risky question. I came across a list of companies in the business of supercapacitors. I don't know how many supercapacitor manufacturers you know. I know basically two companies who are really in the market. That's Memory and that's Ningbo in China. I don't discuss which capacitors are better, but these are all double-layer capacitors. The list I found in the book runs much longer, and somewhere in the bottom there's one company I've never heard of who apparently is making metal oxide-based supercapacitors. One company. The problem, this illustrates the situation. The market is full of this double-layer capacitors, and the attractive perspective of getting capacitors with 10 or even 100 times the capacity using these oxide materials is very challenging. But stability. These double-layer capacitors you can buy from, as I said, Ningbo or from Memory or so on. They run for 1 million of cycles with hardly any change of internal resistance, which is very important for the high rate capability, and with hardly any loss of capacity. In case of the oxide materials, many authors nowadays claim superior performance when they have barely finished 1,000 cycles. If you think of a supercapacitor, that's 2 days. Are you going to sell a customer a supercapacitor who might survive 2 days or 3 days? Nobody is going to buy that. And right now at our place, for example, a PhD student I tried to instruct from somewhere on the way from Germany to China, start lifetime experience. Something like 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 cycles. That's still not 1 million, but that's moving at least into the right direction. So to answer your question in one word, lifetime. Or stability if you prefer.
Thank you very much, Professor Dugo, for your lucid talk and the good answers. I think I'm sure there will be lot many questions which can be asked during the lunch time and at a later time. Keeping you the time constraint.
At various parts in India as well as abroad. I invite Dr. Bhavin Chirkania to proceed with his presentation.
Thanks, Professor Sharma, and I'd like to thank Professor Lokhande and Professor Bede for giving me this opportunity to come here. But I'm pretty much a complete fish out of water right now. So, just to understand, if I have an audience, how many of you are from the field of medicine? Okay, so at least about 20% of the people here. And as Professor Halls was saying, I am all of you who understand medical words better. You just have to bear with this. You can just assume that you're undergoing some kind of a kindergarten exercise to kind of refresh whatever you might have learned in the past. When we talk about radiology, and I kept asking Rakesh, I've known him for many years, as to why did they invite a clinical medicine person to a conference on convergence and nanotechnology. And his answer was the convergence part. And when I started thinking about it, the question that everybody would first have is, what is radiology? And radiology is a field that creates images of the body, different body parts for diagnosis and management. But we use specific tools to do that. And what are the tools that we use? Probably the most common even today is the X-ray machine. The X-ray machine essentially throws out X-rays that go through the body parts and we get an image like this. And we call it a radiograph. We look at it and we make a diagnosis. However, while the technology is used by doctors, the person who created the technology, or who discovered X-rays and then laid the path for the invention of these X-ray machines, was not a medical doctor. And he was a doctor, Dr. Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen. We celebrated the International Day of Radiology yesterday, which is essentially his birthday, and he won the Nobel Prize in 1901 for this. And he was essentially a physicist, right, who did something that changed the practice of medicine forever, right? It was a huge paradigm shift to be able to see the lungs and the bones and the insides of the body. Now, taking this ahead, so for almost a century or at least 80, 90 years, X-rays ruled the roost. And then somewhere in the late 1960s, there were some researchers out of England who tried to figure out whether these X-rays could be used better to create images within the body that would allow us to look at soft tissues. Many of you would realize that when we have X-rays like this, all that we can see are high contrast structures like the ribs and the lungs, but within the heart that you see here, I can't differentiate the chambers of the heart, etc. And in 1969, Godfrey Hounsfield and his colleague Alan McCormick, invented the first CT scanner for a company called EMI. And Godfrey Hounsfield was an electrical engineer. He won the Nobel Prize for this in 1979. The CT scans are done by us, interpreted by us, but the person who was responsible for it was not a medical doctor, but an electrical engineer. A lot of the work we do with nuclear medicine, with positron emission tomography, owes a huge debt to Marie Curie. And she obviously won 2 Nobel Prizes, one for physics in 1903, one for chemistry in 1911. Unfortunately died of the ill effects of radiation because she wasn't aware, despite all her intelligence, that radiation could be harmful in large doses. But today, PET-CT has completely revolutionized the field of oncology, right from diagnosis to treatment monitoring. Again, everything that we do is done by clinical doctors, but we owe a debt to a physics and a chemistry professor. The other modality we use, and we will talk about this today, is MR. And MRI uses protons within our body that are aligned in different ways using various different body parts across all organ systems. And again, while contentious, there were many people who were involved in the invention of the MRI machine, but the Nobel Prize went to Professor Paul Lothar, again, not a medical doctor, but he was responsible for creating an instrument that has again completely revolutionized. Ultrasound is again an extremely common modality. This was an extension of the use of sonar that was used by the submarines during World War II to find objects within the sea, and then that eventually translated into the first ultrasound machines in the 50s and 60s, and then today, of course, you can have an ultrasound machine on your iPhone, and that's the kind of technology that we're dealing with. So that's as far as the convergence is concerned, right? All of us who today have either visited doctors or are doctors will not go away without some test that involves one of these modalities. These modalities were created by physicists, engineers, and chemists, right? That is the power of convergence. What we owe today are debts to people who made these machines, and then we use them for the benefit of society. So what is radiology's goal? It is to be able to solve problems and give answers to clinical questions. And this is done primarily using structural evaluation. And I'll give you one example of what we do on a day-to-day basis routinely. So here's an 18-year-old pediatrician's daughter who the entire heart in 4 to 5 seconds, right? We have tubes that rotate extremely fast and allow us to do that. All of these things are done in the engineering labs and then validated in a patient environment. This fast scanning allowed us to pick up what we see here as filling defects within a structure called the pulmonary artery. This is a life-threatening complication called pulmonary thromboembolism, and again, the non-medical people may have heard of this. When you hear of people dying on airplanes, right, with long flights, you have thrombi in the veins that go up into the chest, and then the patients die suddenly. Right? That's due to pulmonary thromboembolism, and suddenly we were able to diagnose this life-threatening condition with extreme ease. Right? It's a binary problem. Is there a filling defect or not? And we're able to do this extremely well due to the changes in technology. We've then been able to scan with high resolution. This is the lung, and you can see the lung as if you've cut an actual lung in the dissection room, and then you're using a high resolution microscope to see the structures. We're not talking of slides, but we're just looking at the actual specimen with a high resolution microscope. And you can see these honeycomb cysts here so well, including the reticular opacities. And today we can reliably make a diagnosis of a condition called idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis simply because of the technology that we have. We can use this for treatment planning, and I'm sure all of you have been to dentists, some of you have had root canals, many of you are thinking of dental implants, especially if you're 80 or 70 years old and want to look 55 or 60. And this is what we do, right? This is a cone beam CT scanner. Then you put it into special programs. The implants that are to be used are then placed by the dentist on his computer before they are put inside the patient. And all of this planning therefore allows accurate planning to happen, or accurate placement to happen within the jaws of the patient without experimentation. All of this is done in advance thanks to CT scans. We've started doing 3D modeling, and in our own center we have a 3D printer that allows us to create models that would help surgeons plan complex treatments. So here is a patient. This is the craniovertebral junction. It's a very complex area. This patient has a complex CVJ anomaly, and we've made a 3D model using CT CT scan data. This 3D model the surgeon holds in his hands is able to actually do the surgery on the model, make sure that he's not hitting vital structures like this artery here, and then he would go into the patient or into the operating room and do the surgery more successfully. The other area that has impacted radiology is deep machine learning and artificial intelligence. So we work with a company where we measure the fibrosis in patients with idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. But this was an article that came out yesterday. Now, many of you know that we measure the bone age of people. Now, this is important. For example, when you have an under-17 tournament and you think that a couple of teams have children who definitely look 18 and 19. And if you have to prove whether they are truly 18 or 17, you would do radiographs of the limbs and then try and estimate bone age. And it's a tedious process that involves matching with references, and doctors hate to do that. Artificial intelligence apparently can do this extremely well, extremely quickly, and it is as good as expert radiologists for measuring bone age. Similarly, this came out about 5 months ago, where if you were in a rural area where there weren't enough radiologists available to read chest x-rays to diagnose tuberculosis, you could use an artificial intelligence setup using deep machine learning to try and pick up TB lesions within the chest x-rays, and then if you had a question, those select radiographs could be sent to a radiologist. And therefore all of this is revolutionizing the field of radiology as we go along. But everything that I showed you today, and everything that I've showed you till now, is based upon anatomy and structure and morphology. That is static images that can be manipulated or read to give information. But you can do so much more. And over the last 3 or 4 decades, we've been able to look at function at different levels: mechanical function, physiologic function, function at the microscopic level, biochemistry related function, and histology. And I'll show you examples of those. So ever since x-rays have been used in medical practice, we've looked at some gross function. So when you do a barium study, a dye that is drunk by the patient, and then you delineate the stomach, etc., you can do this in real time. You can follow the passage of barium, you can see the motility of the small bowel, etc. Or when you're doing an x-ray of the cervical spine, you can do it in flexion and in extension. If you're doing an MRI of the TM joint, which is the joint that connects the jaw to the skull, you can do it in the closed mouth and the open mouth position. But these are very, very gross efforts at trying to understand mechanical function. What we can now do is all of this. And let's look at some examples. This is a 25-year-old patient with thalassemia. All of you know that thalassemia is a condition where a patient has a bleeding disorder which is congenital. And to prevent that from happening, the patient receives blood transfusions typically every 2 weeks to 3 weeks. Now, because the patient is getting blood transfusions, there is iron deposition in different organs of the body. So today, thalassemia patients live very long. But if they get iron in the heart, they pretty much get heart failure by the time they are 20-25 and they die. There are drugs that can be used to actually remove the iron from the heart, but you would use them only if there is iron in the heart. So you need to estimate the iron in the heart, and we do that using MR. Here is a beating image of the heart, which is essentially normal. And here is a special sequence that was developed many years ago at Imperial College that actually looks at a parameter called T2 star, which is a relaxivity parameter. If that T2 star is less than 20 milliseconds, it means that there is iron overload in the heart. And at 3.2 milliseconds, it tells us that there is severe iron overload in the heart. The same thing can be done for the liver, for the pancreas, for the spleen, and for the pituitary. And while these are important, the heart remains the most important structure that we study. Now, this is a patient in 2015 who has iron in the heart. You can see the dark structure here. But when the drug was used, you can see in 2017 that the iron has gone from the heart. So not only can we diagnose iron overload, we can also check its reversal on follow-up studies. In this patient, unfortunately, in 2015 there was no iron in the heart. By 2017, there's a lot of iron in the heart because the patient was not taking the drugs properly that he or she was supposed to do. So essentially here, MR is being used to estimate the iron content in the body. It's a form of biochemistry that we're doing, and we're looking at a specific metal in this way. And function, because we looked at the beating heart, we can look for wall motion abnormality, check if the ejection fraction or the function is normal or not, and manage accordingly. Here is another example of biochemistry. So this is a 58-year-old man with suspected gout. And this is a radiogram that is usually typical of gout. But if the serum uric acid levels are normal, and gout is an arthritis where there is uric acid deposition or urate crystal deposition within the joint, and then the joint gets destroyed. We have a technique called dual energy CT. So in that, we have two beams of different energies, let's say 80 kV and 120 kV, that go through the body. And different materials behave differently when they are exposed to two different energy beams. And one of them is monosodium urate, or the MSU crystal of gout. Now, what we have done now is coded every MSU crystal as green. So you can see the MSU crystals as green structures here. This is a 3D image that shows it really well. But the moment we see, and we call it green as gout, the moment you see green on a dual energy CT, because all of that has been coded, we know that we're dealing with gout because we identify MSU or monosodium urate crystals within the joints. How cool is that, right? So you can see that in the wrist joint here, and this is again a form of biochemistry. We're looking at anatomy, and then we're looking at specific crystals within the body that we can identify using dual energy CT scan. We can also replace histopathology in some instances. Many of you know that when we are looking at specific tumors, when we're looking at specific structures, that histopathology is called the final word. So you take tissue out of the body, the pathologist looks at it under a microscope and then makes a diagnosis. Now, when we look at diffuse liver diseases, the common name is cirrhosis. It may occur because of alcohol consumption, which is the commonest cause, or hepatitis B virus infection, which is the second commonest cause, or many other conditions as well. One of the things that we need to do in a patient who has cirrhosis is to estimate the extent of fibrosis. Now, this is done using histopathology. You do a liver biopsy, and then the pathologist looks at the slides and says this is grade 1, grade 2, grade 3 fibrosis. The amount of fibrosis in the liver determines prognosis, determines how long the patient is going to live, etc. Using MRI and using a function called elastography, where an ultrasound beam goes into the liver, the elasticity of the liver is measured and then converted by the MRI to give us data. We can actually estimate the amount of fibrosis within the liver. So we get values of stiffness. You're actually looking at what is the stiffness of the liver. That has already been correlated on other studies with the fibrosis on histopathology. And today, based on the stiffness of the liver, we can estimate the amount of fibrosis. And today, if you have access to an elastography unit, you don't need to do a liver biopsy to estimate fibrosis in cirrhotic patients. And why is this an issue? Because a liver biopsy can have many complications, including death. So without touching the patient, you can get this information that you want. So structure and histology, just using a simple MR. Let's look at another aspect of function. This is a 32-year-old with a glioma, which is a tumor in the brain. And you can see this area, the white area here, which is the tumor. Now this tumor is on the left side, and it is in an area where you have the motor cortex, which means that whatever controls the right side here is where the tumor is. The neurosurgeon and the patient want to know that when they go and operate on this, will the patient have a deficit, that is the inability to move the right hand. And so you need to know whether the area that the right hand is controlled by is involved or not. And how do you do this? One is, of course, you look at the fibers, but that's one way of doing it. But what we do is a functional MRI. So in the MRI machine, the patient is moving the finger, and we're using a special sequence to find out which is the area of the brain lighting up when the finger is being tapped. Okay, so here's the finger being tapped. That is the tumor, that is the cortex which controls finger tapping, which is essentially your entire upper limb, and you know that this is outside the tumor, and if and when the tumor is removed and if it's done well by the neurosurgeon, the patient should not have a deficit. So on the other side, that's the normal area, that's the area next to the tumor, but we can make that out, right? So this kind of information, you can also ask the patient to speak if you want to study the speech area, especially if the tumor is in the temporal or the parietal region, and so on and so forth. You can study language areas as well, and all of this can be done using a technique called functional MR. Mind you, everything that I've shown you so far is stuff that we're doing on a regular day-to-day basis. This is not science fiction. This is not from the journals. This is not stuff that is going to happen in the future. This is stuff that is happening today as we speak. So this was structure and function. Let's look at another example of function. So here is a 57-year-old lady with lymph nodes in the axilla, the armpit area, positive for cancer on a biopsy, likely suggesting a primary malignancy in the breast. However, when we did the PET-CT, the PET-CT is a very powerful tool where we inject fluorodeoxyglucose, which is a radioactive substance in the body, and anything that consumes glucose will basically light up. So that same gland in the armpit that was positive for cancer lights up. We've just coded it as orange, somebody will code it as blue or green, it doesn't matter, but it lights up as you can see here. However, nothing is lighting up in the breast. And remember, PET is an extremely powerful tool, but something is wrong. We're not getting a light in the breast. Does this patient really have breast cancer? We move to another modality. This is an MRI of the breast where we've injected a dye, and we've injected the dye and then scanned really fast, right? Multiple scans at 10-second intervals to get something called a dynamic study. When you get a dynamic study, we can do perfusion analysis. So what we've done is on the MRI breast, they found two white areas that seem to be abnormal. Then the perfusion curves were run on those, and you can see here that the perfusion curves are suggestive of possible malignancy. Now the next step will be to actually use the MRI and to biopsy these nodules under MRI guidance to confirm that these are the reason why the patient has cancer nodes or glands in the armpit. So perfusion analysis again talks about how these lesions behave when blood is going in and blood is coming out, or when the dye is going in and dye is coming out, and that gives us a basic estimate of whether these lesions are benign or whether these lesions are cancerous. So again, an example of structure and function together. Let's look at treatment. So this is a 35-year-old lady with dysmenorrhea, that is essentially painful menstruation. This is an MRI that shows a large fibroid, or women would know what fibroids are in the uterus, right? Now, on an MRI scanner, if we load a transducer that generates high intensity focused ultrasound beams, we can direct these beams into the fibroid and burn it. So a focused ultrasound beam can be heated to 60 or 70 degrees within the fibroid. We can burn the fibroid, and the MRI acts as a very expensive thermometer. So you actually know what is the temperature at the site where the heating is occurring. You can prevent additional heating, otherwise you can have complications, and you can burn the fibroid. And in this case, we burned the fibroid by about 70%. This was 1 month later, where you can see that most of it was burnt, and this is 6 months later, where 40% of the fibroid is gone and the patient has significantly improved. So we took the MRI that Paul Lauterboer and Damarian, etc. had invented. We put in an ultrasound unit that can focus an ultrasound beam, that can heat a fibroid, and we can treat a fibroid. So not only can we diagnose the fibroid on MR, we can go ahead and burn it as well. So that's structure with function, intervention, and treatment. Another example of that. So here's a 52-year-old with an X-ray that shows a spot in the lung, and this essentially looks like a cancer, but we have to prove it. So the first thing you would do is a PET CT, and I showed you an example with those glands in the armpit. You can see that it's lighting up. Now that you know that it is consuming a lot of glucose, it's possibly cancer. What would be the next step? You have to prove it. How do you prove it? You have to get tissue out of it. Like I said, eventually it's the histopathologist who will tell us whether it's cancer. If it is it adenocarcinoma, squamous cell carcinoma, etc. And so under CT scan guidance, we can actually put a needle inside that white area. We can draw tissue out and we can send it to the pathologist. This is called CT guided biopsy, and again this allows us to get a definitive answer. Not only that, the tissue that we get can then go for genetic studies, mutation studies, anything that will help the treatment of the patient. So here we're looking at structure, we're looking at function with PET, and then we're looking at intervention. The last two cases. This is a 57-year-old who was operated for cancer of the rectum and then had these spots within the lungs. These are small spots. It's very difficult to know whether these are cancerous or whether in our country they're due to old tuberculosis. Now we could follow this up over a year, and then if they grow, then you think that they're cancer. But imagine if you wait for a year and they grow, then you've lost any chance of treating these lung nodules if you could. Now, because of the advances that we have, where you can use the CT scan as a fluoroscopy machine, so in real time you can shoot X-rays and see that, we can actually target nodules that are as small as 5 millimeters, and we can put a needle inside. You can see the white needle in and do a biopsy. So not only can we do CT guided biopsies of large lesions today, we can push the envelope and we can actually do biopsies of nodules that are as small as 5 millimeters, making a diagnosis. In this patient, unfortunately, this turned out to be metastasis or spread of cancer from that rectum. He's got about 6 nodules in the lungs. So now, whether they would remove all of them or treat the lungs with radiotherapy, that is a decision that needs to be taken. To put all of this together, right, everything that we've spoken so far, let's look at one case. This is a 64-year-old man with a suspected cancer of the prostate. So we've done everything that we've already talked about. This is an MRI where we've done a routine study that shows some abnormal area on the left side. Then we've done something called a diffusion scan that looks at the status of water molecules, and we can see something is abnormal. Then we've given the dye injection like I showed you in the breast cancer case, and we've done a perfusion analysis of that. Then we've looked at those post dye injection images, and then we've done a study called spectroscopy where we're looking at the protons and the way they behave in terms of the chemicals or the biochemicals within. So you can look at choline, you can look at with various other metabolites by using the spectroscopy function of the MRI within that part of the prostate. And that again will tell us, if you get a choline peak here, then you know that this is likely to be cancer of the prostate. So when you put all of this together, the fancy term given for this is multi-parametric MRI of the prostate. but it really helps. So if my multi-parametric MRI of the prostate is normal, in a patient who is suspected to have cancer, I don't need to do a biopsy. I don't need to do anything else, because the negative predictive value of a normal multi-parametric MRI, you've done everything, perfusion, spectroscopy, etc., is upwards of 95%. If we find something abnormal, then the biopsy can be targeted to that area rather than biopsy the entire prostate. Right? So that makes a big difference and allows us to therefore reduce the number of invasive procedures as well as increase the accuracy of the MRI modality that we're using. So this was a combination. We looked at structure, function, biochemistry with chole, histology, and intervention. So, while radiology has primarily been involved with evaluating anatomy, morphology, and structure, over the last couple of decades, it has slowly moved into providing functional information of varying kinds. So whether you use MR spectroscopy, elastography, dual energy CT to give us biochemical information, whether we use elastography, for example, to replace histology, whether we look at just function that is related to motion, whether we use the modality for intervention, all of this is completely changing the way radiology is being practiced and the way radiologists are perceived today in the medical community. I would go so far as to say that the only complete doctor in medicine today would be a radiologist. So any of you who are not radiologists here, you might want to think of changing your branch after you've seen all of this. So thank you so much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bhavi. I think you have done a very interesting talk and brought your article to a new level. And I think you have really talked about convergence. And I must thank all the scientists, people sitting here. It's their effort that which has brought radiology to this big level. And I'm sure with the deliberation that we are going to have, we will find a lot of new innovations, which ultimately come to the medical practice, and they will be enjoyed by all of us for the years and decades to come. Thank you very much for such a nice talk. I would like to just mention here that Dr. Bhavan is running one of the best state-of-the-art radiological centers, not only in Mumbai, but in whole of the India. And he's been often referred by the foreign countries also for his second opinion about all the difficult cases. And today, we are very fortunate that we'll also be doing an MOU with this center, with our university, so that our students and faculty could also benefit with all of the benefits that is done. And again, keeping in view the time constraint, I will ask for 2 questions in case you would like to ask.
Well, it's an excellent talk. So you have witnessed all the invention in the radiology since last 3 decades. So my question is...
You're making me sound old here. Just don't say 3 decades.
It's okay. And my question is the rate of new invention is really slowed down or it is going...
No, it's all dead. There is no more innovation happening on the hardware side. There is no new paradigm shift. It's all over. So whatever we had with X-rays, with CT, MR, ultrasound, it's all gone. So there's nothing on the horizon except better ways to use these modalities. And the one challenge that will eventually change the way radiology is practiced, for good or for bad, we don't know as yet, is artificial intelligence and deep machine learning. So it has the potential to aid us a lot. It has the potential to be very disruptive. So the next paradigm shift will come not from a hardware or a software technology related to radiology, but something completely allied, and that's deep machine learning. It's going to change your field as well, except it won't take away your operating skills, but everything else.
Thank you. One more question. Sir, good morning. I have a very excellent lecture. I'm a pediatrician. So we do see cases of 20 years these days.
Second thing is these protocols which you have seen. Yesterday I was reading a book on radiology. At MIT for like a structural anomaly at birth of trachea. So how do we order these tests? Because we are not very much aware in spite of being a clinician. So how do we order?
So two things to that. One is that yes, if you knew the terminology, then you'd say you want a minimum IP.
Yeah, yesterday I read the terminology MIT for the first time.
Correct.
Yeah.
But having said that, your radiologist should be able to do the right thing in the right situation. So if you have a hospital or a center that is reliable and you can work with well, the moment you send a pediatric a child with a tracheal abnormality, it is understood that the minimum IP and the reconstructions will be done, because that is today's state of the art. Not even state of the art, it's just current practice in most places. So it's just, your familiarity obviously helps, because if you mention it, then they have to do it. But it would also be nice to just find out those radiologists in the area where you practice who understand all of this, and where you don't have to break your head the moment you send the patient, it's done.
And one more thing is, because there are different modalities are available. Like I have a bronchoscopy, I have this one, and then I have virtual bronchoscopy. So most of the time we say that the direct bronchoscopy is better and this one.
Yes.
So what is your experience?
Yeah. So as far as the trachea is concerned, virtual bronchoscopy is just a gimmick. I mean, it's of no use. Yeah, it has to be direct bronchoscopy. There's no use. The only use of any virtual scopy is virtual colonoscopy, because it can. You don't need to do a direct colonoscopy when you're screening for polyps. But when you have a disease process, then you have to do direct scopies anywhere in the body. You can't replace that with a virtual scopy. So the virtual scopy, we can do it, and it's a great tool to have, but it has no relevance in the trachea.
And the vascular rings or something.
So that we would do an angiogram, we would see the vascular rings. We would do 3D reconstructions to show the trachea from outside, but you don't need a virtual endoscopy for that.
Because we don't have anything to suspect these anomalies. So can we order them?
Yeah, so patient will have stridor, right? So
yeah.
You would say that, suspected vascular anomaly, please image accordingly, or please do a CT angio or something like that.
I think, sir, you have a lot of many questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I think there are some postgraduate students from the Department of Radiology. Are they here? Do you have anything to ask him after listening? Or you will interact with him later on? Okay. Dr. Bhavin, thank you very much for such a nice talk.
Thank you, sir. I request Professor Akeshama sir to felicitate Professor Bhavin. Sir. I request Dr. C.D. Lokhande sir to felicitate our chairperson, Dr. Akeshama sir. I would like to call upon stage Honorable VC, Diva Patil University Kolhapur, Professor P.V. Bereser to join the stage. So I also request Dr. Bhavi Zankadia to join the stage.
As announced in the morning, we are very glad to actually share the MOU with Dr. Zankaria's clinic, Mumbai, with Dr. Zankaria sir. I would request all of you to give a big round of applause. And I thank Dr. Zankaria, Dr. R.K. Sharma sir, Dean and Co-Convener, President Professor P.B. Bere sir, and our Convener Lokande sir for exchanging this MOU. Thank you so much, sir.
Everyone might be hungry, so we will break for lunch now. Lunch is arranged downstairs in the hall. I request all to resume here by 2:15. Thank you.
Just give me a minute. Found it. Somebody put my stuff into a backpack and I just it was confused, but found it. No, it's fine. No, it's fine. And well, there's no question about this password.
So you want that password, right? You want Wi-Fi password? You want Wi-Fi password?
So perhaps if you know the
you write in it. No, that email has the password. No, that is not the password of DYP.
Let's try. I will call him.
Try digital at campus.
Just
So
try.
I'll write a password. Just try that.
If not working, then
If not working, I'll give you another one.